All right, welcome back to the left-handed bandit mobile paint party experience. This is video two, and as you can see, I have my canvas already set up, and it is dry to the touch, so I can start adding those foreground details. Again, if your canvas is not dry, because you may have accidentally used a little bit extra paint, it's not the end of the world. You just want to make sure it's dry before we actually get back into this. So the best way to tell is to tap the canvas just to see if it's dry. If it's sticky, then it means that you need some more dry time. If it's dry to the touch, then you're good to go. If you didn't use too much paint, you should be already good to go. So we're going to be using our same materials. Make sure you have a little bit of each color left. You're going to need at least the size of a nickel for most of them. No more than the nickel's amount. If you got a whole bunch of paint on your canvas or on your plate, then you're good, but a lot of that's probably going to go to waste. You only need a little bit of paint at a time for this, so just keep that in mind. We're going to be using a lot of black, and we're going to be using just a little bit of the other colors just to give it some details and effects. Remember to rewind the video, pause the video at any point if you need to. If you know me personally, feel free to reach out to me. I will do my best to help you. With that being said, we'll jump right back into the second part and finish this off. So not far to go. I'm going to be starting with my regular detail brush for this, and it's probably the only brush that we're going to use unless we do more details to the background colors. But with this brush, I'm going to be taking a little bit of water, actually. Take some of your water, and with your black paint, I want you to add some water to the black paint. And the reason that we're going to water down and add some water to this black paint is because when we add water to the black paint, it allows it to be a little bit more flexible and easier to use. So with that paint sitting on the plates for a little while now, the air may have gotten to it. It may not be completely dried out, but it's a little bit more dry and hard to work with. So we're adding water just to make it a little bit more flexible. And another thing I want to show you is while we're doing these final steps, the best trick you can do is take both sides of that paintbrush and smooth it out in your paint. And when you do that, it's going to sharpen your brush. So that way you can make sharper, tighter lines, and you can kind of do more fun tricks with your black. So every time I grab some black paint for this step and some foreseeable steps after this, each and every time I'm going to smooth my paintbrush out in my black to sharpen the brush up. So these final steps are mostly about detail and different things that ties the painting together. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the outline of the lips just to give ourselves a little bit of practice on line work. So play around with the angles of your paintbrush. After you twist them different angles, they will give you different results, thinner and thicker. So just play around with that for a sec, just see if you can get comfortable with that. But when you are comfortable, I'm going to go ahead and start by outlining my lips. And when we're doing these black steps, then the painting is going to start really coming to life. You'll see in just a second. So I'm adding a black outline. Feel free to grab more black paint. You don't have to be so shy about this step because we're going to need a lot of black paint for this step. But add a little bit of water if it's not being too friendly with you. So I added some water and it's working for me again. I'm smoothing over it just to make sure I got a solid, bold black outline to my lips. I'm going to do the entire outside of the lips. You don't have to start from where I'm starting. You can start anywhere on the lips as long as you're starting with the outline of the lips first. The reason we're doing the outline first is because it just gives us a bit of a barrier, a protection, so we know that as we're adding detail to other parts of the lips, where we should or shouldn't go on our canvas. So I got the top lip outline. I'm gonna outline this bottom lip. That's a nice, big, bold outline. You can outline in any order you choose. You see, I'm kind of jumping around on mine, just because I'm painting from an awkward angle and I'm left-handed, so it just helps sometimes. And as we're getting towards the end of this painting as well, I want you to keep in mind that these are the steps where you can start doing your own thing. You can add your own swagger to the painting. take your own creative liberties and freedoms at this point, so you don't have to do everything the way I'm doing it. You can dare to be different for these steps. So I got my entire outline on my lips now, nice bold outline that pops. Now I'm going to go to the inside and outline this top lip. Remember, every time you grab more black paint, smooth it out. Play around with the direction of your paintbrush to see what gives you thicker lines and what gives you sharper, thinner lines. That'll be a best friend for these steps. Gonna continue outlining this lip. I'm gonna outline the bottom lip. And I'm also gonna go back while I'm in there. If you remember, I painted it right before the break. Now that that paint is dry, if I go ahead and add another layer on top of it, it'll be even darker and bolder because we've layered up our paints. So feel free to add more black paint to the inside of your mouth if you feel that it's too gray or too transparent. So if you see, it's made it very bold, and it contrasts well against those teeth as well. So now you got a nice dark opening in the mouth with the bright, vibrant teeth. Before I end with these outlines to the lips, I'm going to go and remember those curves that we painted earlier. I'm going to smooth both sides, very, very important. Smooth both sides of this paintbrush out into that black paint so we get a nice sharp paintbrush, because we're going to go in, we're going to add a little bit of black to these curves. Now, I'm just adding just a very, very little bit. So make sure your brush is nice and flat, and start from this bottom line for each one. And remember to curve in the right direction depending on which side of the lips you're on. So I'm going to start right here at this first curve, and I'm going to start from the black, and you might want to rewind this a couple of times if you need to make sure you're doing it right. Start from inside this bottom line in the black and take that curve up just a little bit. We don't need to go up the full way. The full way, it'll look like there's cuts in your lips, so I wouldn't recommend going up the full way. We're just starting again from the inside of this black line and carry it up just a little bit. The reason we're doing this is it's going to show just a teeny bit of texture on the lip. And if you're not liking the way this is looking, you don't have to do this. Or if you're afraid that you might goof it up, then play it safe. But if you like a challenge, if you like to take risks, feel free to do this. And if you don't like the way it comes out, I'll show you in a quick sec how you can kind of hide that and cover it back up. But I want to wait till that dries just a little bit first. So I got this in. What I want to do next is I want to add some more detail into the lips. So I'm looking at the top and the bottom lip. And I'm rinsing off my paintbrush in my water, tapping on the side of my cup, dabbing both sides off with my paper towel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these accompanying colors that I still have in my plate and add just a faint amount to the lips. Now, as I'm doing this step, you'll notice that I'm going to be curving the same way I did with those curves, these colors into that bottom lip so that they take on the shape of the lip. I'm going to add just a faint amount, just a little bit to the top lip, but not a lot. And I'm going to curve those up as well, but I'll show you that in just a second. So remember, the most important thing for this step is pretend that there's actual lips here, realistic lips, and and not flat. Realistic 3D lips have a curve to them. So we're gonna curve our brush strokes with our lip. And again, I'll show you that in a second. So nice clean paintbrush. You're gonna use just the littlest amount of paint possible. We don't need a whole glob of paint for each color. We're gonna go color at a time. First, I'm going to start with a baby blue. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a little bit of white paint and I'm gonna mix it with just a touch of blue paint. Find a clean area on my plate. There it is right there. I want to make sure you see. And I'm mixing up a baby blue. And the reason for baby blue is just because that royal blue would be a little bit too strong for those lips and it may throw it off. We can add a little bit of royal blue, but it won't be a lot. So baby blue is just a little bit easier to get away with. So I'm going to add, again, just a teeny bit. I'm not going to overkill it. So maybe I can add a couple of curved brush strokes here. 1, 2. And again, rewind this if you need a little bit more of an explanation or me to see me do it again. I'm going to come over here, maybe add another one. Notice I'm curving up and taking on the shape of that lip. I think that's enough blue for the top, so I'm going to come to the bottom, maybe add a little bit of blue right here. Maybe a little bit of blue right next to it. I'm going to come to the other side. Add a longer streak of blue, and notice the directions that I'm curving in. Depending on where I'm at on my lips, depends on where those brush strokes curve down. So use your original curves that we created as a nice guide that's going to tell you which direction to curve in. Added a little bit more to the top lip because I was feeling confident. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to wipe the excess paint off of my paintbrush and onto the paper towel. I'm not even dipping it in the water. I'm going to grab just the teeniest touch of white paint. And for all those blue streaks, I'm going to add white right to the side of them. And the reason I'm doing that is just that's helping add more contrast, more detail, kind of gives it a cool effect. You don't have to do this. I'm kind of just taking my own creative liberties at this point. And you'll notice I got a little bit of black in here as well. And that black is still a little wet, so I just brushed it away and it dried right up. So if you make a little mistake like that, you can always fix it. Paint fixes all our mistakes. So I'm done with my blue. I clean off my brush again, and you're gonna do the same thing with the other colors. So you go in with a little bit of blue, a little bit of purple, a little bit of yellow. We already got red in there, so we don't need red. So I'm gonna do those same steps. Starting back with the purple. I'm gonna choose maybe 1, 2, 3 areas on my top lip. I'm gonna go to the bottom lip, and I'm gonna choose maybe 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 on the bottom lip. I'm wiping my excess paint off of my paintbrush onto the paper towel. I'm gonna grab just a teeny bit of white paint like we did before. Same process, right next to that purple, add just a touch of that white paint. It's gonna blend together a little bit, create a cool little effect. Can't forget the lips at the top and then the pieces at the top. Rinsing off my brush again. I'm gonna switch to my yellow. Maybe add just I don't want too much yellow, I don't know why, but I think just a little bit of yellow is all we need for this. So a little bit of yellow, 2, 3, I'm going to the top lip, 4, 5. So we got 5 swipes of yellow, teeny bit of white next. It just gives it a different look. And the more you do this, the more comfortable you'll get to make those brush strokes. And it might be hard to tell because through camera, but in person, it should start looking really vibrant and kind of cool at this point. So I want to mix a little bit of green in there. So I've cleaned off my brush again, and I want to mix up some green paint. So I'm going to take just a little bit of blue paint, find a clean area on my plate with some blue paint, take a little bit of yellow, mix it into the blue, and it's going to turn green for me. The more yellow you add and the less green you have, then the more light that green color will be. So if you want like a lime green, then put more yellow. If you want more of a forest green like I'm having right here, put more of the green. I want more of a lime green, so I'm going to add a bunch more yellow to mine. We're getting to the end of the painting, so I'm not going to need any more of that yellow, so I can afford to waste it. So it's turning more of a lime green that I want. Well, we got this lime green. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to find a couple of open areas. Maybe right over here. Got some green paint here. Going to add a little bit of green paint right here. And then maybe just a little bit for the top here and here. And why not here? Go back, brush the excess off, grab a touch of white paint. Add a little swipe of white to that. Those green areas. And boom. And we got that. Now, we're going to do a couple more details to the lips, but we want to wait until those colors dry up first. So while we're waiting for those to dry up, they'll be dry in just a few minutes. Let's rinse our brush off, and we'll start adding some background details to start finishing up the background of our painting. Now, for this step, you don't have to do this. You can watch me first and decide if you want to do it. If you're liking the way your background looks, then you can keep it as it is. You don't have to add this. But this is more of a funky, urban type of trick you can do to add your own signature to this. If you know me personally, you may have seen me do this to a lot of the paintings that I used to create back in 2015, 16. But it's not something I do quite as much anymore. But for this, let's bring it back. So, about 5 or 6 minutes out from finishing this painting, what I'm going to do is I added more more water to my black paint. I'm using black paint for this step. Still using that same detailed paintbrush. Watered down my paint a little bit so it's easy to work with. And in the background, you can create any type of design you want. So just to give you ideas, maybe you can write your name on here. You can write something that means something to you, anniversary dates, whatever you want to write, birthdays, whatever. But for this, I'm going to add a breakout detail to the background. But again, you don't have to do this. You can do whatever you want to your painting for this step to customize your painting. We're essentially done. We're just adding those little fine bells and whistles to give the painting a little bit more life. But if you're interested in this, what I'm doing is I'm essentially creating lines in the background. I'm breaking up my colorful background with solid, random black lines. And you're probably wondering why I'm doing it, but you'll see as I get closer to done that this creates a neat little effect, almost like abstract to a small extent. You can make the lines curvy if you want. You can make them geometric and straight. The choice is yours. You don't have to make lines at all if you don't want to. I like the geometric straight lines when I like the curvy, so I'm just going to add just a couple of curvy lines to balance this out, just because I just did a curvy line on the left side because I want to create a form of aesthetic. So that's all the curvy lines I'm going to put. Rest of the lines I have are going to be nice and solid and rigid. Remember, smooth and flatten out both sides of your paintbrush. It's going to help you make sharper, tighter lines. I'm just breaking this up. Okay. It's a slow process, but it'll be worth it in the end, hopefully. Again, you don't have to do this. Some people may like theirs better without these lines because they appreciate all the color in the back. And color does look good, but some people like to break things up and switch things up and be a little bit different. So I'm doing this just to give you some ideas. The possibilities are honestly limited, unlimited, I mean to say. But you do what you like best. So I'm getting closer to finishing up these breakout lines. I'm going to make sure I get the bottom. Can move the canvas just a little bit so I can touch the full bottom. Now it's just this area right here. Canvas is moving a little bit on me. I don't know about how yours is looking, but maybe compare to, if you're painting with someone, compare your paintings. You know, crack a couple of jokes if you need to, but compare the paintings and see how yours differ, what things you could do different. Compete with each other, see if you can make one canvas better than the other. It's up to you. But I'm starting to get to a point where I'm liking how it's looking, so I'm going to go ahead and stop there with my background lines. And next, I'm just going to add some final details, and I'm all done. Two things specifically. So these colors should be pretty dry for the most. If you added a lot more paint, maybe give it a couple more minutes to dry. Maybe pause the video, let it dry, and then continue. But for these couple of details, you want to make sure that it's not too wet just because you don't want the paint muddying together. So I'm going to make some white highlights to my lips. Using white paint, I clean my paintbrush off and I switch to just straight white paint. So with this step, we just want to make some shine effects. And there's really no structured way to do this except dabbing little bits of white paint. The more white paint you add, the more vibrant it'll be. I suggest maybe about this much on your paintbrush, if you can see that. It's not a whole lot, about that much though. And just kind of choose a couple of random areas, and as you add it, just kind of curve it along with the lips like we've been doing, but you're going to be making very short marks. So I'll show you one first. So I'm just going to take the paintbrush and lightly just dab a white squiggle on there. It's no specific structure to it. It's random. Just the best thing you can do is make them short and curve them the best you can. So I'll make a little bit more. You can make short ones, but this is adding a shine effect to my lip, as if there's a light being cast on it. They're going to kind of fall in line. I'm going to come over here and do some more. You can make them going all the way across your lips if you want. It's completely up to you. But again, just be careful. You don't want to add too much because it'll become too much on the eye visually and throw your painting off. I'm going to add just a little bit in the middle, not a lot. I'm curving. I'm liking when it's looking on the bottom. I'm going to add a little bit to this top lip, just a teeny bit. And I'm going to even add some other highlights to the inside top of this lip. So I can do a little highlight here. See how that's kind of bringing the painting together? I can do a little one down here, and then maybe one more over here. And why not one more right here? Why not? So now we got a nice shiny gleam to our lips. You can take it further if you decide to do those breakout lines in the back. You can even add some white lines to highlight those breakout lines in the back. But if you think that's too much, then you don't have to do that. But if I do those white lines to the breakout lines, I'm not going to add a whole bunch because, again, that'll make the painting look very busy as well. We want it to be a nice balance where it's not too heavy on the eye. So that when we have people come over, when all this craziness is over, they can admire the art and not wonder, what did you do or where did you go wrong? So, got that. Now, our painting is essentially done. You can stop right there if you wanted to. I'm going to do one more thing to this painting just to give you a bit of an idea of what you could do. Is maybe add some smoke, or like I said earlier, add gold colored teeth or different colored teeth. Maybe if you have a gap feature on in your smile, maybe you can even give the teeth a gap, whatever you like. But one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a little bit of smoke coming out, just a little bit, just because I like the effect. Now, this is a very optional step, and it's a little bit interesting to do, but I'm essentially taking my dirty paint water and I'm going to add it to my plate on a clean area. So I'm just adding water, some dirty paint water to my plate. And I'm going to mix in a very teeny amount of black to that water, mix it in. And now we have our smoke substance. So it's just dirty paint water and black paint. And we use paint water because water thins out our paint. And we want this paint to be a little bit see-through like the smoke. So I'm just going to choose an area on my mouth with this transparent paint. And then just paint a little bit of buff coming out. Again, it's optional. You don't have to do this step. But this is something I wanted to add to mine. Not to add, be careful not to add too much water, because it will start to affect the rest of your painting. So again, if you don't want to take this risk, that's fine. You can call it a day. But for those who like to take risks, like a challenge, I encourage you to try it. Last thing I'm going to do is just add a little bit more white to the smoke, a little bit of white to the smoke, just to give it some contrast. And that's it. That is what we like to call loose lips sink ships. It's one of my originals that I used to do back when I started doing paint parties in 2015. So I'm just going to sign an initial however you'd like. You can do it on the front or the back. I just like to initial the bottom right corner usually, and then I add all my flair later. So this has been Loose Lips Sink Ships. I appreciate you painting with the left-handed Bandit. I thank you for your support. If you ever like to do it again, feel free to reach out to me. I ask you not to share these videos just for the time being. Kind of keep it to yourself. But again, thank you, and check you out later.